Thank you for joining Wars of the Roses as we continue with Part 19, The Assassins, Book Four Ishmaelites, from Secret Societies of All Ages, Volume 1 by Charles William Heckethorn. 2. The Assassins, 142, Foundation of Order. Only Arabia and Syria could have been the theater of the dismal deeds of the old man, or rather Lord of the Mountain. Hassan Sabbah was one of the days or missionaries of the School of Cairo, a man of adventurous spirit who, having greatly distinguished himself, acquired much influence at Cairo. This influence, however, excited the envy of others, who succeeded in having him exiled. He had been put on board a ship to take him out of the country, but a storm arising, all considered themselves lost. But Hassan, assuming an authoritative air, exclaimed, "The Lord has promised me that no evil shall befall me." Suddenly the storm abated, and the sailors cried, "A miracle!" and became his followers. Hassan traversed Persia, preaching and making proselytes, and having seized the fortress of Alamut, 1090, on the borders of Iraq and Dilem, which he called the House of Fortune, he there established his rule. 143. Influence of Hassan. What kind of rule? The history of his time is full of his name. Kings in the very center of Europe trembled at it. His powerful arm reached everywhere. Philip Augustus of France was so afraid of him that he dared not stir without his guard around him, and perhaps the otherwise implacable Lord of the Mountain forgave him because of his fear. At first he showed no other intention but to increase the sway of the Caliphate of Cairo, but was not long before throwing of the mask, because his fierce character submitted with difficulty to cunning and hypocrisy. He reduced the 9 degrees into which the adherents of the Lodge of Cairo were divided to 7, placing himself at the head with the title of Seidna or Sidna, whence the Spanish Cid and the Italian Signore. The term assassins is a corruption of hashishim, derived from hashish, the hemp plant, with which the chief intoxicated his followers when they entered on some desperate enterprise. 144. Degrees of the Order. To regulate the 7 degrees, he composed the Catechism of the Order. The first degree recommended to the missionary attentively to watch the disposition of the candidate before admitting him to the order. The second impressed it upon him to gain the confidence of the candidate by flattering his inclinations and passions. The third to involve him in doubts and difficulties by showing him the absurdity of the Quran. The fourth to exact from him a solemn oath of fidelity and obedience, with a promise to lay his doubts before his instructor. And the fifth to show him that the most famous men of church and state belonged to the secret order. The sixth, called confirmation, enjoined on the instructor to examine the proselyte concerning the whole preceding course, and firmly to establish him in it. The seventh, finally called the exposition of the allegory, gave the keys of the sect. 145. Devotion of followers. The followers were divided into 2 great hosts, self-sacrificers and aspirants. The first, despising fatigues, dangers, and tortures, joyfully gave their lives whenever it pleased the great master, who required them either to protect himself or to carry out his mandates of death. The victim, having been pointed out, the faithful, clothed in a white tunic with a red sash, the colors of innocence and blood, went on their mission without being deterred by distance or danger. Having found the person they sought, they awaited the favorable moment for slaying him, and their daggers seldom missed their aim. Conrad of Montferrat, having quarreled with Rashid ad-Din, the then Lord of the Mountain, and also caused a number of Mussulman prisoners, brought from Tyre to be massacred, Saladin induced Rashid ad-Din to kill Conrad. Richard Coeur de Lion was long accused of having instigated the murder. 2 assassins allowed themselves to be baptized, and placing themselves beside him, seemed only intent on praying. But the favorable opportunity presenting itself, they slew him, and one of them took refuge in a church. But hearing that the prince had been carried off still alive, he again forced his way into Montferrat's presence and stabbed him a second time, and then expired without a complaint amidst refined tortures. 146. The imaginary paradise. How was such devotion secured? The story goes, according to Marco Polo, that whenever the chief had need of a man to carry out any particularly dangerous enterprise, he had recourse to the following stratagem. In a province of Persia, now named Sigistan, was the famous valley Mulbat, containing the palace of Aladdin, another name of the Lord of the Mountain. This valley was a most delightful spot, and so protected by high mountains terminating in perpendicular cliffs that from them no one could enter the valley, and all the ordinary approaches were guarded by strong fortresses. The valley was cultivated as the most luxurious gardens with pavilions splendidly furnished, their sole occupants being the most lovely and charming women. The man selected by the Lord to perform the dangerous exploit was first made drunk, and in this state carried into the valley, where he was left to roam whithersoever he pleased. On coming to his senses sufficiently to appreciate the beautiful scenery and to enjoy the charms of the sylph-like creatures that kept him engaged all the time in amorous dalliance, he was made to believe that this was Elysium. But ere he wearied or became satiated with love and wine, he was once more made drunk, and in this state carried back to his own home. When his services were required, he was again sent for by the Lord, who told him that he had once permitted him to enjoy paradise, and if he would do his bidding, he could luxuriate in the same delights for the rest of his life. The dupe, believing that his master had the power to do all this, was ready to commit whatever crime was required of him. 147. Sanguinary character of Hassan. In that inaccessible nest, the vulture soul of its master was alone with his own ambition, and the very solitude which constituted his power must at times have weighed heavy upon him. And so it is said that he composed theological works and gave himself up to frequent religious exercises. And this need not surprise us. Theological studies are no bar to ferocity, and mystical gentleness is often found united with sanguinary fury. But he killed with calculation to gain fame and power, to inspire fear and secure success. He impressed on his followers the belief that he could see things happening at a distance, and having established a pigeon post, he was frequently informed of distant events with a surprising rapidity. A Persian caliph thought of attacking and dispersing the sect, and found on his pillow a dagger and a letter from Hassan saying, "What has been placed beside thy head may be planted in thy heart." In spite of years, he remained sanguinary to the last. With his own hand, he killed his two sons, the one for having slain a day, and the other for having tasted wine. He did not design to found a dynasty or regular government, but an order, sect, or secret society, and perhaps his sons perished in consequence of badly disguising their desire to succeed him. 148. Further instances of devotion in followers. The obedience to the faithful did not cease with Hassan's death, as the following will show. Henry, Count of Champagne, had to pass close by the territory of the assassins. One of the successors of Hassan, Rashid ad-Din, invited him to visit the fortress, which invitation the Count accepted. On making the round of the towers, two of the faithful, at a sign from the Lord, stabbed themselves to the heart and fell at the feet of the terrified Count, whilst the master coolly said, "Say but the word, and at a sign from me, you shall see them all thus on the ground." The Sultan, having sent an ambassador to summon the rebellious assassins to submission, the Lord, in the presence of the ambassador, said to one of the faithful, "Kill thyself," and he did it, and to another, "Throw thyself from this tower," and he hurled himself down. Then turning to the ambassador, he said, 70,000 followers obey me in the same manner. This is my reply to your master." The only exaggeration in this is probably in the number, the whole number of followers being never estimated above 40,000, many of whom, moreover, were not faithful ones, but only aspirants. 149. Murder of Rashid ad-Din's ambassador. The Knights of the Temple had possessions in the neighborhood of those of the assassins, and their superior power had enabled them, at what time is uncertain, to render the latter tributaries to the amount of 2,000 ducats per annum. Rashid ad-Din, to whom all religions were alike, conceived the idea of releasing himself from this tribute by becoming, together with his people, Christians. He therefore sent in 1172 an ambassador to Amalric, king of Jerusalem, offering to embrace Christianity, provided the king would engage the Templars to renounce the tribute. The king readily assented to this, and at the same time assured the Templars that they should not be losers, as he would pay them the 2,000 ducats annually out of his treasury. The Templars made no objection, but on his way home, the Ishmaelite ambassador was murdered by some knights of the temple, who it would appear acted by the orders of their superior, who probably did not consider the royal promise good for the tribute. At all events, when Amalric, full of indignation at the perfidious conduct of the Templars, insisted on their being punished, Adod Saint-Amand, the master of the temple, contented himself by saying that he had imposed penances on the murderers. The king, however, got hold of Dumesnil, the leader in the assassination, and threw him into prison. But the king, soon after dying, Dumesnil regained his liberty. All hopes of the conversion of the Ishmaelites, however, were at an end. 150. Suppression of assassins. Rashid ad-Din died in 1192. His successors had neither his genius nor his prestige. The days of the sect were counted. In 1256, Hulagu, the brother of Mongu, the great Khan of Mongolia, invaded Persia and exterminated all the assassins he could seize. Rokan ad-Din, the last master of Alamut, was put to death. Most of his fortresses fell into the hands of Hulagu, but the Mamluk Sultan of Egypt, having in 1260 defeated the Mongolians, the fortresses were restored to the Ishmaelites. But this was only a respite. In 1265, they forced to pay tribute to the Sultan of Egypt. Sarim, the then chief of the assassins, in 1270 made one more effort to throw off the Egyptian yoke, but he was defeated. And in 1273, the assassins had surrendered all their strong places to Baybars I, Sultan of Egypt. But this ruler had no intention, like Hulagu, of exterminating the assassins. His object was to turn them to account. Ibn Battuta, the traveler, in 1326, found them residing in their ancient towns and fortified places. They are, he says, the arrows of the Sultan with which he reaches his enemies. And from the preface to a collection of anecdotes regarding Rashid ad-Din, made by Abu Firas about the year 1324, we learn that the doctrines of the assassins continued to be openly professed. 151. Modern assassins. The sect is still in existence both in Persia and Syria. The Persian Ishmaelites dwell chiefly in Rudbar, but they are to be met with all over the east and even appear as traders on the banks of the Ganges. A. Drummond, British consul at Aleppo, in his Travels Through Several Parts of Asia, London, 1754, says, page 217, some authors assert that these people, the assassins, were entirely extirpated in the 13th century by the Tartars. But I, who have lived so long in this infernal place, will venture to affirm that some of their spawn still exists in the mountains that surround us. For nothing is so cruel, barbarous, and execrable that is not acted and even gloried in by these cursed Gordina. Further, Monsieur Rousseau, the French consul at Aleppo, when traveling through Persia in 1810, found that the assassins recognized as their chief an imam of the posterity of Ali residing at Keik, a small village between Isfahan and Tehran. His name was Shah Khalilullah, and he was revered almost like a god and credited with the power of working miracles. Fraser, another traveler, says that the followers of Khalilullah would, when he pared his nails, fight for the clippings. The water in which he washed became holy water. This chief was killed during a temporary sojourn at Yezd in a riot against the governor of the town, and he was succeeded by his son. 152. A modern assassin chief. In 1866, a singular law case was decided at Bombay. There is in that city a numerous community of traders called Khojas. A Persian, Aga Khan Mehelati, that is, a native of Mehelat, a place situated near Kek, had sent an agent to Bombay to claim from the Khojas the annual tribute due from them to him, and amounting to about 10,000. The claim was resisted, and the British court was appealed to by Aga Khan. Sir Joseph Arnold investigated his claim. The Aga proved his pedigree, showing that he descended in a direct line from the fourth Grand Master of Alamut, and Sir Joseph declared it proved. And it was further demonstrated by the trial that the Khojas were members of the ancient sect of the Assassins, to which sect they had been converted 400 years before by an Ishmaelite missionary, who composed a work which has remained the sacred book of the Khojas. It is written in a jargon which only the initiated can understand. In 1841-42, during the Afghan War, Aga Khan furnished to the British government a contingent of light cavalry. raised at his own expense, for which he was awarded a pension, which, besides the £20,000 per annum he receives from the Khojas, enables him to live in good style either at Bombay or Pune or Bangalore, where he indulges in his favorite pastime, hunting. When the Prince of Wales was in India, he paid a visit to Aga Khan, whose ancestor Rashid ad-Din Sinan had spared the life of Richard Coeur de Lion. 153 Christian princes in league with assassins. Several Christian princes were suspected of conniving at the deeds of the assassins. Richard of England is one of them, but we have seen that he is free from the charge of having instigated the murder of that Conrad of Montferrat spoken of above. There also existed for a long time a rumor that Richard had attempted the life of the King of France through Hassan and his assassins. The nephew of Barbarossa, Frederick II, was excommunicated by Innocent II for having caused the Duke of Bavaria to be slain by the assassins, and Frederick II, in a letter to the King of Bohemia, accuses the Duke of Austria of having by similar agents attempted his life. Historians also mention an Arab who, in 1158, was discovered in the imperial camp at the siege of Milan and on the point of stabbing the emperor. Who had armed that assassin? It is not known. Mutual distrust existed amongst the rulers of Europe, and the power of Hassan and his successors increased in accordance with it. Thank you for watching, and please don't forget to share, like, subscribe, and comment, and if you can, please consider donating to Wars of the Roses. Links to PayPal and Patreon are in the description. Thank you so very much.